Creating an accent wall can really make a room pop. Now you can do that with a contrasting paint color. But today we're going to take a different approach. We're going to add a wall back here that has a lot of texture. In fact, we're going to turn this wall into stone.
Well, not actual stone, but realistic faux panels I found online at Decorative Ceiling Tiles.
The stone panels arrived today, and as you can see, each one is individually boxed. Let's open this up. Yep, nicely wrapped in plastic, got insulation on both ends, everything arrived in good shape. You know, and one thing I noticed about this right away, it's extremely light. Now these are made of high-density polyurethane, and I think they're very realistic looking.
Each panel is a precise duplicate of individually selected real stones, which are hand-stained by trained artisans to ensure the panels look indistinguishable from the real thing.
It's important to bring the panels into the room where they'll be installed about 24 hours ahead of time, so they can acclimate to the temperature and humidity. It's also important to store them flat as opposed to putting them up on edge. We're almost ready to begin installing, but there are a couple of issues that we have to take care of first. Now, these panels are designed to be interlocking like this. That makes the joint or seam virtually invisible. But this interlocking design becomes a problem over here because the end of this panel is going to go in that corner, and we need a straight edge right here.
The solution, of course, is to cut off the staggered end. First, I'll place a scrap piece of rigid foam insulation on the work table. Then lay the panel on top, upside down. This will allow me to cut completely through the panel while it's entirely supported. Next, I mark the cut line, align the edge of a circular saw cutting guide, affix the guide temporarily in place with screws, and, using a circular saw, make the cut. As you can see, both the cut-off piece and the panel are fully supported. The first panel now fits snugly into the corner.
Now we have a second issue here, and that is that this floor is not level. It drops off, about 5/8 of an inch in this 4-foot span. Now it's absolutely critical that the top of this first row of panels is absolutely straight and level. Otherwise, the interlocking joints won't fit properly. So we're going to have to make an adjustment here. Now to double check myself, I'm using a laser level. This red line is level, and I've aligned the line with the top of the panel over there on the left end. Here you see the panel is about, almost 3/4 of an inch higher than the level line. So to correct that, I'm going to have to take about that amount off the bottom of the panel.
To make sure I don't get disoriented, I'm using a piece of tape to mark the corner from which I'll be removing the most material. I place the saw cutting guide along the bottom edge of the panel. Now, as you can see, this will be a tapered cut, 0 off one end and 3/4 of an inch off the other. I secure the cutting guide with screws and, using the circular saw, make the cut. Using the panel as a guide, I mark the location of the top edge on the wall. Then, with the 4-foot level, I draw a line showing where the top of the panel should be after it's cut. A test fit shows that everything is correct. A quick note here. A 4-foot level can also be substituted for a laser level if you don't have one. The second panel needs to be trimmed in much the same way, since the floor is sloped from one end of the wall to the other. As I test fit the second panel, we can get a good look at how the interlocking joints slip together.
Now, as you can see, this wall has an electrical outlet right in the middle. Now, I don't want to cover that up with the panel because I want access to it, want to be able to use it. This system comes with a housing that's designed to solve this problem. But the first thing I need to do is locate the exact position of this opening relative to the panel.
I slip the panel in place and mark the right edge. Then I turn off the power at the circuit breaker, remove the outlet cover plate, unscrew the receptacle, pull it out, and disconnect the wires. Now it's a matter of measuring the distance from the top and right side to the edges of the electrical box, then transferring those measurements to the panel. I also measure and mark the width and height of the electrical box.
Now this is the location of the wall outlet relative to the panel, and it's also the same size as the outlet box. But the opening I need to cut in this needs to be large enough to accommodate the housing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the housing on top of that rectangle, center it, and then draw a line around the outside.
With a 3/4 inch drill, I bore a hole in the center of the housing outline and, using a jigsaw, cut out the opening. With the opening cut, I test fit the housing, and then check to see that the opening and housing match up with the wall outlet. Next, I measure the distance from the second panel to the corner and transfer that measurement to the third panel. Once again, I align the circular saw cutting guide with the marks I just made, secure it in place, and cut the panel to length. This panel, too, will require a tapered cut along the bottom edge. Finally, a test fit. I'll be using high-quality construction adhesive to attach the panels to the wall. I trim the nozzle, puncture the inner seal, load the cartridge, and we're good to go. I apply the adhesive in long, straight beads on the back of the panel, set the first panel in position, then use a finish nail gun to secure it in place while the adhesive sets. Using the same process, I install the second and third panels in the first row.
Well, I want to start the second row here, but before I do, I want to talk for just a second about the seams between the panels. They're almost invisible. In fact, I've highlighted this one with some blue tape. What I do want to avoid, though, is a straight seam that goes from the floor all the way up to the ceiling, because under certain lighting conditions, it could be a bit visible. So, I have cut this end panel shorter than the one below, so that the seam is here rather than here.
From here, panel installation goes quite quickly.
Now, I've already trimmed the end off the starter panel for the top row, but when I put it up here, you can see that the panel itself is a little too wide. So I'm going to have to trim a bit off this top edge here. Now I could do that using a saw, but for such a small amount like this, I prefer to use a sanding block or a plane. This is an electrical outlet box extender. I've installed one here in order to bring the outlet forward to be flush with a new stone wall.
With the box extender in place, I reattach the wires to the receptacle, fold the wires into the box, secure the outlet, and install the cover plate. Finally, with wood filler, I fill any visible nail holes. And using touch-up paint provided by the manufacturer, blend in the color. As you've just seen, an accent wall like this can be installed without the mess, specialty tools, and masonry experience needed for real stone. Not only is the look truly authentic, but it's also one you can absolutely create yourself.